Well, I mean, yeah. Well, speaking of like individuals and the basis of individuality and all those other things, I think for the folks that are just like perusing, the meme pages and the internet out there, like we talk about like how a lot of these guys, like Milspec Believer, bro, is probably not that disillusioned, right? Like he's having a good time. It's fun to make fun of things, but as an outsider, how do I determine a truly disillusioned person versus, we know people that have gotten out after 20 years that like to hop on social media and talk about all the things that are wrong, but they're doing it because they care, right? Like
Sure.
they see
Yep.
things that maybe are going down the incorrect path from their perspective. And a lot of times I think they're right about a lot of things. But how do you differentiate between that person and the E3 who doesn't know anything? And it's okay to complain. I'm not saying it's a necessarily bad thing, but how do you differentiate between, the real complaining with merit, experience, and information behind it versus just that E3 hopping onto Twitter, X, TikTok, or whatever, and just venting about things that they're possessing 6% of the information about what's
Right.
going on around them.
Yeah. Or they're parroting it. Number one, I'd say consider your source, I guess. Looking at who it is that's actually saying it. Like, do they have the experience necessary? Can you verify that they are who they say they are? Can you understand that they may have a good take? Like, have they made good takes in the past? Like, as a utilitarian or in a utilitarian sense to figure out what information is true and what information isn't, man, no clue. Cause I'm still trying to figure that out. I try to figure that out on a daily. I see a news source and I'm like, okay, well, now I got to try to verify this through 9 different sources and try to corroborate some of the information. And when it doesn't match up, it may not mean, that it's true. Just look at the most recent thing that happened at the Canadian border with the car. Like the car that raced towards the Canadian border, it took 2 seconds for that to be, it started off, it was a terrorist attack.
Yep.
And then it was a terrorist attack by Hamas. And then it was a terrorist attack by Iranian-backed people that were in and out. And then we couldn't figure out which way it was going. Was it going into America? Was it leaving America? Was it Canadian terrorists? Was it American terrorists?
A picture of a passport at one point. That was super exciting.
Gee, you're just like, oh man, I'll tell you, whatever they're making passports out of, they're indestructible. Because we found all of them in 9/11, and then we found this one completely pristine as well. It's crazy.
The year 2000 is when we made big leaps in passport technology.
Big leaps in passport technology, nearly indestructible. Absolutely. But then that ended up being, it was just a guy in his Bentley with his wife that sped towards the border, lost control of his car, and it blew up. It was not a malicious attack. And the most frustrating,
am I right?
What's that?
Rich people. Ugh.
Yeah, that was a problem. Well, and then the most frustrating thing about it is the news cycle is so fast now that a lie or a miscalculation or misinformation or disinformation or malinformation, it goes around the world twice before the truth has even left the station. So you don't even know, like by the time that you get to home base, which is, oh no, this was a car accident. It wasn't an attack. It was just a car accident. The lie has already been out there and people have already formed opinions based off that incorrect information. So I guess the only thing that I can say is, number one, you just wait. Anything that you see, any news story that comes out, you are never going to be wrong by just waiting. And I've been wrong on this before. Like I've been the person that didn't wait, that wanted to address something that got out there. So I'm speaking from experience, not from me just guessing. Just wait. Give it 72 hours and see how the story evolves, because it's going to change.
Yeah, but I ended up without toilet paper because I waited one time. What about that, Aaron? Because I'm not prone to panic,
Such a wild time. Do you know how much time I spent with a bleach, like overly bleached out water, wiping off doorknobs and high touch places in a unit at the DoD because we thought that COVID could live on surfaces? That has never happened in the history of the planet. Somebody's going to hit me in the comments for saying in the history of the planet. Listen, COVID didn't live on surfaces. Everybody that was wiping off their bananas before they peeled them and eat them, I think you might have been incorrect. And I think in hindsight, we can look back and go, yeah, it probably wasn't a thing.
It's cool how Amazon figured out how to not let it live on their surfaces, though. So
totally fine.
That's totally cool.
Yeah, totally crazy.
The toilet paper thing is a good example, I think, of how something fairly ridiculous gains traction. And once it gets picked up, once it has momentum, like some of these narratives, some of these stories, some of these things which can become very real things, like us not having toilet paper, which had nothing to do with COVID, by the way. I don't know why we ran out of toilet. I still don't know why we ran out of toilet paper. Like it takes a very small percentage of people to just buy all the toilet paper they can, and then all of a sudden it's just disappears. It was wild.
Right. I think was it the lockdown? Was people didn't want to be stranded without toilet paper, so they were buying because they didn't know they were going to be locked down for 2 weeks. People were. You're not going through a roll of toilet paper a day by yourself. People were buying just tons of toilet paper.
Well, I mean, if you leave McDonald's open because they're essential, you might be.
Taco Bell. Don't even get me started on what places were essential and what places weren't. Because I'll tell you what, that didn't make any sense to me. But